Okay. In the absence of a gavel, it's 7:31. I'd like to call the school board meeting for regular board meeting at Board of Education for District 15 to order for December 8th. Mr. Sanopadre, you are on the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a roll call.
We do, sir.
Is there a public comment? Anybody signed up for public comment? Okay, thank you. Moving on, we are going to pull item 2C from the consent agenda. And there'll be separate motions and votes for that. Absent that, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda for items A, B, and D?
A motion to approve.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Second, Chair.
Mr. Sanopadre?
Yes.
Mr. Syverson?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mrs. Geyer?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes. Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
It's yes or no?
Sorry, yes.
Okay, for that, now we, for the, we have the tax levy. Just ask for a motion to approve at this point.
Right, this one.
Okay, so, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the resolution to approve the 2015 tax levy. Can I get a motion?
A motion to approve.
Mrs. Geyer, a second.
I'll second.
Mr. Sanopadre?
Mr. Syverson?
Can we have discussion on that motion?
Sure, we can discuss that, yes.
Second.
But you don't need to discuss, second the discussion. Go ahead.
Well, there's been 4 tax protest lawsuits filed already in the last month. The basis of them is that they're accumulating funds for beyond the next year, and the school code says that we can't levy for any purpose beyond just the expenses of the next year. Based on our expenses for previous years, I think we're levying about 5% too much, and we propose that we reduce these amounts by 5% to avoid levying more than the law would allow.
Any other discussion points? Any other questions or discussion?
So I'd specifically like to make a motion to amend the levy amount to be $46,814,100, and then that's 5% off of each of them. I can give you the exact amount for each of them.
And I second that.
Okay, we have a motion to amend the existing motion, and a second
Right.
for that amendment. So what you're voting on right now is whether or not we're going to amend the tax levy. Can I comment on
It was
his
up for
amendment?
discussion.
It's still up for discussion. Well, you made a secondary motion prior to that, and so I'll comment on that. We currently are running, projected to run about an 8-month surplus at our low point in the next year, not a 12 or a longer month surplus, so we're not illegal in our levy in the first place. Second, we're running a structural deficit this year, not a surplus in the current year. We're running a deficit as we continue to spend on savings both for construction, well, no, it is for construction, as well as potential for state, but what would appear to be only 3/4 in the current year reimbursement and categorical. So you're factually incorrect, sir, on 2 points. We can certainly expect that there'll be proration coming from the state, and as what we have done consistently as a board over the course of my entire tenure here, is we have levied only that dollar amount that has been consistent with what has been allowable within the law. Currently, the current levy is projected, will levy on a cap fund basis at $47,400,000, $50,997,000 when we include the debt service, which is uncapped, which is in order for us to pay down our debt, which will be paid off by 2019. did I have that right, Mark? Is it
2020.
2020, I apologize. By 2020, at which point the levies will go down considerably once that debt is paid down. We will continue to run, we have completed our construction, and we have maintained a safe savings balance should the pension morass get dumped in our laps, and should the state maintain a property tax free, or elect to pass a property property tax freeze, which is certainly a possibility. At the end of the day, what we're taking from a levy standpoint this year is an 0.8% increase in the property tax levy across existing taxpayers, across the entire board. Now, it'll be different from one person to the next based off how property tax appeals take place and the like. But it will allow us to pick up another 0.2% approximately from new construction by doing that, which is a fairness issue, we've always addressed as a board, which is that if you build something new, you should be paying your fair share of property taxes, just like everyone else who lives in the community. Finally, when we look at that levy, what that means, that 0.8% increase in levy rate is actually a decrease in property tax rates in the next year, because property tax values have gone up by over 3%, which will mean that for existing taxpayers, what your tax rate is going, your tax dollars are going up because the value of your property is going up. And as a property homeowner, which I am, the number one thing that maintains the value of my property is a quality school district. And that's what District 15 has been, has aspired to be, continues to be as a board, what we've continued to represent to do. And as a property taxpayer, that's what I expect that this district should do, and that's what my constituents have elected me to maintain. So that's my comment to that. Are there any other comments?
I would like to make a comment.
Yes, please.
It was in the Northwest Herald at the McHenry for District 15 and 156. It's the third most expensive. The first being 156 was Wonder Lake. More than any other, we're the most expensive. So I feel like we should really try to, I'm sure we can find some ways of cutting in some ways to give the taxpayers a break, especially when they have lawsuits against it saying they're too expensive.
None of those lawsuits have named District 15 at this point.
And I would like to also comment, my neighbors moved here, and they literally specifically moved to McHenry because of the cheap tax rates. They moved from another county to this county because we are so cheap in our taxing district. So there are different opinions here everywhere.
But the amount that I'm proposing we take off is about the same amount that we've been putting away each year for things like a pension cost shift or changing the funding from the state. And the school code specifically talks about that, and it's section 5 specifically says that we can't levy extra money for an emergency fund.
Which we have not done. We have levied consistent.
If the intent is to levy it to prepare for an emergency where something would change in our funding, then we have to, when that change occurs, the way that the school code says we're supposed to get that money is to go for a referendum.
Well, that's your interpretation of the law, Eric, and quite frankly, I will defer to our attorneys who have reviewed what we've been doing over the years. I will defer to professionals who are far more knowledgeable about this stuff than you.
And we were saying that we're running a deficit this year, not in these funds that we are levying for. Where the deficit comes in is when you include capital improvement. We have no levy amount on here for capital improvement.
Capital improvements is borrowing from some of the other funds in order to pay for the existing.
And that's not the way the funding is supposed to work.
That's the way it is.
If we need more funding for capital improvement, we're supposed to levy for capital improvement through a referendum.
Okay. Are there other comments?
I just want to point something out, because I did read the Northwest Herald, and the issue about the tax rates. Mr. Miller pointed out that rates are actually going down because EAV is increasing more than what CPI is, which is true. Mm-hmm. And the reason why our rate might be higher than some other communities is our EAV went down more than in other communities the last few years. And I was a bit disappointed by the article because I actually had someone from Northwest Herald ask me about that, and I explained that to them. And I don't think that was really explained much in the newspaper article. The other thing, that over a year worth of funds on hand, that is not true. They are not looking at financials the way they're supposed to. So you have people who aren't trained in finance reporting paper that frankly aren't correct. And I think people are reading that and maybe getting the wrong conclusion.
Any other comments? All right, so we have a motion on the floor to amend the levy from by 5%. And there's a second. Can I get a roll call on
Mr. Syverson,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Geyer,
No.
Mr. Miller,
No.
Mr. Sanopadre.
No.
All right, the amendment has failed. Discussion is concluded. Can I get a roll call on the original motion of resolution to approve the 2015 tax levy?
Mrs. Davis,
No.
Mrs. Geyer,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Sanopadre.
Yes.
Mr. Syverson.
No.
Can I get a motion, so that motion passes?
Yes, sir.
Can I get a motion to approve the resolution for working cash funds?
A motion to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the resolution of working cash funds?
Mrs. Geyer,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Sanopadre.
Yes.
Mr. Syverson,
No.
Mrs. Davis.
No.
That passes 3-2. Can I get a motion to approve the resolution for special education purposes?
A motion to approve it.
There's a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Sanopadre.
Yes.
Mr. Syverson,
No.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Geyer.
Yes.
That passes 4-1. Next up is the life safety. Can I get a motion to approve the resolution for the life safety fund?
A motion to approve.
Mrs. Geyer moves. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Sanopadre seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sanopadre.
Yes.
Mr. Syverson.
No.
Mrs. Davis.
No.
Mrs. Geyer.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes. Can I get a motion to approve the resolution certificate?
Motion to approve.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Mr. Syverson.
Oh, hold on a second. Is there any
Sorry.
discussion? Hearing none.
Mr. Syverson,
No.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Geyer,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Sanopadre.
Yes.
Finally, can I get a motion to approve the resolution certificate of compliance with the Truth in Taxation Act?
Motion to approve.
There's a motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? I will make a comment on this then. This is the resolution of certificate of compliance, and my understanding of this is that this is simply that we comply with the law and we post it accordingly. We file all these things accordingly, correct?
Yes.
There's no dollar amount associated with this. This is approving that we follow the law and we follow the paperwork, correct? Correct?
Yes.
I have a question on that.
Mhm.
This here is, Kim is attesting to it, the way it is signed. Same with these other ones here. Can she legally attest to it not being here before the minutes have been approved? And, because our minutes won't be approved until after the first of the year, which is later than all this stuff is supposed to be filed.
That's a good point. We'll check with our attorneys and make sure we're in compliance with the law on that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Do we need to have, does it need to be signed as vice president and?
It may very well be.
Board
Tom, are
member?
you willing to weigh in on that at
I
this
think
point?
that's a better way to go.
Thank you.
And both Kim and Mike are not here for these other ones. So does it need to be signed as vice president and as board member? Attesting?
Yes, that's what.
Two different.
That's actually, I think, what we're doing. Is that in this second?
It's not the way they are in my packet here, so.
Written as you and testifying, known to be vice president, person known to
I
be
see.
board member.
So these changes in resolution, these actual resolutions themselves will be struck? Or
Yes.
we can strike that through?
Yes.
Put my name
Yes.
and put the board members' names?
Absolutely.
perfectly fine. We'd strike those and sign them.
This gentleman is Tom Mandler, an
Right.
attorney for Hinshaw and Culbertson.
Right.
Most of the board is not.
He's one of our attorneys. Okay, any other discussion? A roll call, please.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes?
Mrs. Dyer.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Santo-Padre.
Yes.
Mr. Syverson.
Yes.
Okay, that concludes well, not just the consent items, but the pulled items for the approval of the tax levy. On the new business, the superintendent's report.
Just a few brief items. Just yesterday, Fred, Josh, and myself presented at the statewide conference in St. Charles, raising student achievement, an hour-long presentation dealing with best practices, really the ingredients of how you build or the characteristics of an outstanding school district. So proud to say that I believe that we have that, and I think the presentation was received very well. December 4th, BPAC Christmas party took place at Riverwood. Thrilled to say, over 200 folks attended that. If you get a chance, come to some of these BPAC events that are becoming quite popular. The 18th is the end of second quarter. Hard to believe Christmas is almost here. Winter recess is December 21st through January 1st. For Landmark, that same winter recess is December 21st through January 8th. January 9 is our annual 3-on-3. It's our 20th annual tournament and foundation. It's also the 10th annual chili cook-off at Parkland, which we've won, I think, 3 times. So we're going to try to bring our A game again this year and see if we can bring home the trophy. But if you want to meet literally thousands of parents, that's a great event to attend because there's so many folks that are there. It's a good time had by all. You'll see kids there. You'll see a lot of, there's always a theme in terms of the chili cook-off. Each of the schools will have a theme. Central office will have a theme. It's a good time. You get to taste some pretty outstanding chili as well. And finally, January 12th is our next Board of Education meeting, and that will be at Valley View. And that is all.
Okay, committee reports. I know, were there only 2 committee meetings today?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, sir, sorry.
It's all right. First, let's talk about building and transportation. Amanda, report on that, please.
Okay, well, we discussed the bus bid. The bus bid was 6% higher this year, but we did have 2 bidders. And the bus bid we picked was $34,190 lower than the higher bid, which is a savings of $175,000 over the 5 years. We're getting 13 71 passenger vans, 7 for us and 6 for the high school district. What did I say? Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
It says buses here in my notes. Right here, I promise, it's written.
Oh, I skipped around when I told you, so it's my fault, sorry.
No, but it does say buses. And they're $10,341 per bus, and that's $134,433. Is that per year or per 5 years?
The 34,000 is the course of, is per year.
Okay. And then we are getting 4 ramp minivans, 2 for us and 2 for the high school, and that's at $6,614 per year, and that is $26,456 per year for the 4. So that's it on the bus bid, but it was nice to have 2 bidders this year, not just 1, so that's kind of a bonus. In the terms of building, we were told that over Christmas break, Duker and Hilltop will be slowly moving in over Christmas, so hopefully they'll be able to start using those schools, or the additions soon. Valley View is getting enclosed, and Edgebrook's looking great. And then slowly we should be starting the new schools over the summer, right? I think that's what the deal was. And
Right, yes.
everything in the additions we put on is looking awesome. So.
Can I ask a question? So with the buses, like at 34,000, does that include gas and maintenance and everything, or is that just for purchasing the bus?
That's just the lease cost of the bus.
That's a lease cost?
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, when we were at the tri-conference, I had talked to them and they had said that the bids were going to be higher this year because of the increased cost for the new emission system, and they've changed motors.
Oh, okay. So how much does it cost for gas for a year, do you think?
It's around well, it's actually lower now, it's probably around $250,000 a year.
Yeah, it's not good.
No, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, well, yeah,
More than I make a
buses.
year.
Yeah, right.
Any other questions for Mrs. Geyer? Okay, the other committee that met tonight was Finance. Talked about the levy already. It was the big thing that we talked about. A couple other items of note. There's still no state budget. The word on the street is that it may be January, maybe February, maybe never. But this will impact us. We're looking at probably only 3/4 of a year for categoricals rather than 4 quarters. This year we received 1/4 from last year. They had pretty much caught up last year, but not that this year looks like we'll fall behind. And so we'll be short money on that. We can certainly expect that they'll prorate the transportation budget and some of the other monies there, and that proration is looking larger than what it has been in the past, like it would be larger than what it has been in the past, given the morass that's going on in Springfield as well. Other than that, that's all we discussed in finance. Any questions?
I would like to put out some new business when you get to that point.
Please do. So, other new business.
I'd just like to ask, since we are doing all the improvements to most of the facilities, if, I know, Fred, when you schedule presentations at those buildings, but possibly, this may be in the works, can we get some formal tours when we visit the buildings? Seeing as though that we've embarked on this building process and improvements at most of our student centers without going for referendum, without costing our community more money, and making these improvements quickly and efficiently on almost all of our buildings. I'd like to kind of get a tour of those facilities, and maybe if we post it, other people might be able to come in during those times and see where their tax dollars are going, because we have saved and been so frugal with the money that we're doing this in a time when most districts are cutting immensely, and we have the opportunity to provide these facilities now for our staff, our community, and our students.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, we did that, this before you were recently
missed it.
appointed. We went to Edgebrook and looked at that facility, but we are planning to do that in each every time, because
Okay.
it is wonderful to be able to do that.
And we will be at Duker in March. We will be
Right.
showing.
So that's kind of the plan too. You're right.
Fantastic.
Yes, sir.
Asking shall receive. Any other new business? Any other items? Then I'd like to ask a motion to, that's not adjourn, it's adjourn? Adjourn into move into closed session to consider appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee or employees, to discuss probable pending or filed litigation, to review closed minutes.
I suggest that we just take 3 or 4 minutes
Right.
before we have a closed session.
Right.
In motion.
Move. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
You need a roll call for that? Any discussion on that?
Mrs. Geyer?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Santacadre?
Yes.
Mr. Syverson?
No.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
I also motion to have this camera removed out of the room so we don't think it's still running.
Yeah, we're going to closed session.
For closed session. All right. So we'll take just a few minutes here.
We
Yeah,
sneakily
just a second.
recording things we shouldn't record.
Coming out in open, we need one to approve the tool. Do we have this motion? Here, give me that.
Where's,
Oh, wait a minute, here it is, hold on.
School board. No.
My bad. It's right, I
Where's
got
the
this.
school board agenda here?
Oh,
It's right
hold
here.
on.
This is what you're. Right here.
I see, I got it right here. These two right here? Yep.
Well, I think
Two
it's three.
approval of land sale.
So it's
and
just
then
2 and 3.
of the-
We need to approve one also, though.
Yeah, you need to do one as well, it's
I
just a
see.
personnel report in
Okay.
general. Exactly.
All right, who can I ask? Mrs. Garrett, did she take the roll call votes on these.
Okay.
Okay, we are reconvened, I don't need a motion to reconvene.
open session.
What's that?
We're in open session.
We're in open, we're back, we're reconvened into open session. I need a motion to approve the personnel report.
I motion to approve.
Can I get, there's a motion on the table, can I get a second to approve the personnel report?
Second.
Any discussion about the personnel report? Mrs. Geyer, can we get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Geyer, yes. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Santapadre.
Yes.
Mr. Syverton.
Abstain.
Is it A for abstain? Okay, so, okay.
That passes. Second, can we get a motion to approve, for approval of the land settlement agreement involving property located at 605 North Green Street, McHenry, Illinois, 60050?
I motion to approve.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
Okay, no, hearing no discussion, can I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Geyer, yes. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Santapadre.
Yes.
Mr. Syverton.
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Finally, we need an approval to approve the closed meeting minutes for, as presented.
On June 23rd and October 7th, 2015. That's the motion.
Okay.
I motion to approve.
Approve those minutes.
Motion to release closed session minutes dated June 23rd and October 7th, 2015. I motion to approve those.
Can I get a second? There's a second. Motion and a second. Any discussion about that? Hearing none, all those, can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Santapadre.
Yes.
Mr. Syverton.
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Geyer, yes.
Are there any other items for the good group? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Can I do a voice vote on that? Or I gotta run the roll call? Roll call. Roll call, please.
Okay, that would be Mr. Santapadre.
Yes.
Mr. Syverson.
No.
No, okay. Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Geyer, yes. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we stand adjourned. Amanda, hang out because you're gonna have to sign the.
Okay, I didn't know how to do this, so I
Thanks,
made up my
everybody, for
own
being here.
notes.
Appreciate